今天是2025年3月13日我们来看一下，对过去的一周过去的几周，川普就这个关税问题这个反反复复的不停的改主意川普是怎么评价自己的？他认为自己不是前后不一致他说我这是很灵活。
I have the right to adjust. It's called flexibility. It's not called inconsistency. It's called flexibility. But there will be very little flexibility once we start. April 2nd is going to be a very big day for the United States of America. The United States of America is going to take back a lot of what was stolen from it by other countries.
再看看加拿大的评论
We are going to make sure that all the proceeds from our tariffs go back to support workers in the affected industries. So in the steel industry and the aluminum industry and any other industry that the Americans may affect. In addition, we will double down on the partnerships that we have with the industry. As you know, a lot of the big investments here have been in partnership with the federal government, with the Ontario government, the so-called SIF fund as one example. We are proud of what you have accomplished. It's a remarkably competitive company. It's a world leader who's going to be here for another 30 years, another 30 years after that, another 30 years after that. And I know there's multi-generations of workers here. And your children and your children's children will have opportunities to work at Dofasco and ArcelorMittal. Let me just say one other point, or make a couple other points with respect to the United States and the relationship there. I respect President Trump's concern for American workers and American families. We respect his concern about fentanyl. It's an issue for us here in Canada as well. And that's why the Canadian government moved very quickly with a comprehensive response that has had a huge, huge impact in terms of controlling that issue and getting on top of that issue much better. We are ready to sit down with the Americans, with the U.S. government. I'm ready to sit down with President Trump at the appropriate time under a position where there's respect for Canadian sovereignty, and we're working for a common approach, a much more comprehensive approach for trade. We're all going to be better off. Workers here in Canada, which is our concern, workers in America, which is his concern, we are all going to be better off when the greatest economic and security partnership in the world is renewed, relaunched. That's possible. You have a new government, but the same commitment, and that commitment is built rock solid on the commitment you have all made here at Dofasco.
New tariffs are now in effect.
我们看川普是怎么这个反驳卡尼的。
Let me just tell you the inconsistency. I have the right to adjust. And I was called by the automakers as an example, General Motors, Ford, etc. The big three, the big four, and they asked me to do them a favor. Could I delay it for a period of 4 weeks so that they're not driven into a little bit of a disaster for them? They actually love what I'm doing, but they had a problem. And I'm not like a block that just, I won't delay. It's called flexibility. It's not called inconsistency. It's called flexibility.
Become the new certainty in North America. That cannot stand. That will make us less competitive. That's going to weaken us, and that's going to affect our economic security and ultimately our national security.
Responsible not to take an opportunity to talk to Howard Lutnick about what we think is important to build a strong North American economy and why we think these continued tariff measures and the necessary and appropriate response that comes from Canada is not a constructive path to be on. If you're like racing to the basement, there's no real prize for being the first person to get to the basement. Like it doesn't feel like the path that we want to be on.
Problem with Ontario, and they dropped that when I let them know what we were going to be doing. They dropped it immediately, so I'm glad, because electricity, you shouldn't be playing with electricity. It affects people's lives there. actually their life. I mean, it can affect, depending on weather, it can affect their life. So we can't do that. And it doesn't make sense that our country allows electricity to be made in another country and sold into us. Who did that deal for the United States?
好，今天就到这里，谢谢大家。